A blonde woman in a regal red dress is judged by shadowy figures, scorned as a fake noblewoman meddling in business. She recalls a time when her fortune shattered, realizing money alone was not enough to protect her family or her life. With cold determination shining in her eyes, she remembers the vow she swore, to use even her enemies to survive. A grand, ethereal mansion seen through a haze of glowing blue flowers. Inside a lavishly decorated hall, a disembodied voice calls out the name Fianma. A smirking, silver-haired man with green eyes leans in, provocatively asking if she is trying to seduce him. Fianma looks up with wide, innocent blue eyes, firmly denying that she was trying to seduce him at all. The man playfully twists a lock of her blonde hair, warning her that the gods say not to lie, and that liars must be punished. His hand tightens its grip on the front of her white nightgown, pulling her closer. He draws her into a close, intense embrace, their faces just inches apart in the tense moment. The story begins anew on a dark, rainy night outside a dreary hospital quarantine facility. Inside the desolate ward, rows of beds are filled with patients hidden under white sheets. In one of the beds, the blonde woman, Fianma, lies sleeping fitfully under a thin blanket. Tossing in a troubled sleep, she whispers for her father and someone named Luca as a tear escapes her eye. Her eyes flutter open, revealing a profound and lingering sadness from her dream. Suddenly, a nun bursts into the room, urgently shouting Fianma's name with a look of frantic energy. Rushing to her bedside, the nun joyfully announces that a cure has finally been perfected. With a flicker of hope in her weary eyes, Fianma weakly asks if the news is really true. The nun beams, her face flushed with excitement, assuring Fianma she would never lie about something so wonderful. As Fianma sits up, the nun adds that the news comes from a devout family, so it must be true. A wave of complex emotion washes over Fianma as she covers her mouth, the news both a relief and a sorrow. Winking, the nun declares the fight against the death plague is over, and Fianma whispers that she's glad. She reflects on a bitter truth. If only the cure had been developed sooner. A painful memory surfaces of her father and Luca in their coffins, a future she could have prevented. Her thoughts are violently interrupted as she suddenly coughs up blood, and a voice cries out for her to hang on. As Fianma lies dying, the nun frantically tries to give her hope, but she can only resolve to get better for the patients waiting for her. Floating before a cosmic clock, she makes a final vow to keep fighting and live for her father, Luca, and the others. A sharp crack echoes as the hands of the great clock begin to spin violently in reverse. Fianma awakens to the relieved faces of a long-haired man with glasses and a young blonde boy who call out her name. She stares in utter shock as the man explains how she wouldn't wake up, confessing how scared she made them. Looking between the familiar faces, she breathes their names in disbelief. Father? Luca? Standing between them, she wonders if the agonizing memory of their deaths was just a terrible dream. She remembers her family's past, how they rose to nobility from merchant status, only for the death plague to claim her father and brother. With the loss of her brother, the heir, their noble title was stripped away, and their hard-earned fortune was lost. Alone and destitute, she finally understood how truly powerless she was against the world. Back in the present, Luca gently tells her she pushes herself too hard, while her father encourages her to rely on them. Luca's bright smile returns as he urges her to enjoy the party and claim the credit for crushing the black market auction. Confused, she repeats his words, "A party, the black market auction," trying to piece together her fragmented memories. She has a stunning realization. Standing before her past self on the face of a clock, she understands she has gone back 4 years in time. While her father and Luca discuss what reward the Emperor might grant them, Fianma listens in thoughtful silence. A look of steely determination settles on her face as she contemplates her second chance. She remembers her past life's choice requesting trade rights for a prosperity that became meaningless when her family died. An ethereal voice echoes through her mind, warning her to think carefully, as this choice will decide her fate. Her gaze sharpens, her blue eyes burning with unwavering resolve. Her decision is made. In a grand hall, a man's voice rings out, praising Lady Grimani for her splendid and impressive work. An elder statesman commends her, saying talented women like her maintain the empire, as others shower her with praise. Fianma stands poised and radiant in a stunning red and gold gown, the confident center of attention. Across the ballroom, a mysterious man with dark hair watches her intently over the rim of his wineglass. Her expression is sharp and focused, her mind already moving toward the future she intends to build. A woman with dark brown hair and a sapphire necklace smirks, recalling who Fianma is. In a memory, the woman laughs, calling the fake noblewoman pathetic and unable to even hold her wine. Fianma's father, the man with glasses, looks on with a pained and worried expression. She can never forget the past, remembering her father holding her hand at a lavish party. As Fianma walks through the ballroom, the dark-haired woman watches her from across the room. The two women lock eyes, the dark-haired noblewoman smirking over her glass of red wine. A sudden splash of red wine flies from a tipping glass. Fianma deliberately bumps into the dark-haired woman, who cries out in shock as she stumbles and falls. Standing over the fallen woman, Fianma coolly thinks to herself, "How shameful." With a placid smile, she extends a hand, offering to help the woman she just tripped. The dark-haired woman flushes with embarrassment, stunned by the offer. Slap! Fianma strikes the woman's hand away, sending her crashing back to the floor. Fianma's father rushes to her side, shocked, as another guest remarks that such behavior is unacceptable. She turns to her father, assuring him that she is all right. An elderly nobleman with white hair fumes, outraged that a newcomer would insult his Cornaro family. Fianma's expression is cold and determined as she watches the approaching nobles. Her father steps between her and the angry family, shielding her from them. A young man with silver hair and green eyes is identified as Alphonse Cornaro. Fianma stares down the powerful Cornaro family, her sworn enemies. Undaunted, she steps forward to confront the head of the family directly. She greets Duke Cornaro with a curtsy, but he scoffs, displeased by the pathetic meeting. As the Duke turns away, guests whisper about the new nobles and identify his son, Joel of House Cornaro. Her hand clenches as a fierce thought cuts through her mind. They are her sworn enemies. Her father steps forward, angrily demanding to know if the Duke just insulted his daughter. The Duke retorts that if he considers that an insult, perhaps his daughter is shameless. Her father, enraged, declares the insult intolerable, but Fianma calmly places a hand on his arm to stop him. Her gaze remains fixed and resolute as she assesses the situation. The Duke internally fumes, angry at being scolded for not properly greeting the newcomers. Fianma understands the Cornaros despise her family, and not just because they are newly rich nobles. She reflects on their power. The Cornaros lead the church, a force that splits the empire in two. By hoarding knowledge, including pharmacology, they maintain control under the guise of preventing misuse. Her family seeks prosperity unbound by the church's rules, making the two factions enemies. A painful memory surfaces of her and Luca tending to their sick father. She recalls how their refusal to cooperate delayed the cure for the death plague, costing lives. Knowing negotiation is a waste of time, Fianma resolves to fight in a different, more decisive way. If her enemies refuse to cooperate, she will turn to a higher power, the Emperor. The Emperor of the Marshamiya Empire, a man with dark hair, stands beside the Empress, smiling. He is officially introduced as His Imperial Majesty, Manuel Domenico III. As Fianma and her father approach, the Emperor welcomes her and praises her for the auction's success. She accepts his praise with humility, while her father proudly insists she doesn't need to be modest. With a grand gesture, the Emperor asks Fianma to name the reward she wishes for. Fianma gives a deep, formal curtsy before the throne. Onlookers whisper, wondering what Lady Grimani will ask for and hoping she knows her place. Fianma thinks of her one wish, connected to the forbidden knowledge of medicine. Then please allow me to marry Lord Alphonse Cornaro. As Alphonse looks on, Fianma hardens her resolve, determined to face this challenge herself. The Emperor recounts her great deeds and asks if marriage is truly the reward she wants. The Emperor, Duke Cornaro, and her own father are all stunned by her request to marry into the enemy family. Smiling confidently, Fianma confirms that she wishes for marriage to Lord Alphonse. What? Two nobles cry out in disbelief at her audacious demand. Other noblewomen gossip in disbelief that Fianma, from a new family, wishes to marry the popular and powerful Lord Alphonse of the church faction. Nobles call her arrogant for seeking a marriage of lineage, while Duke Cornaro implores the Emperor not to entertain such nonsense. The Emperor considers the proposal, realizing he'd never thought of the Cornaros marrying someone from his own faction. He realizes this reward could place his own guard within the enemy faction, potentially tipping the current balance of power. As Fianma watches, The narration reveals the emperor has long resented the church for monopolizing power and wealth. With a calculating smile, the emperor understands the opportunity and declares that her wish shall be granted. Standing alone in the grand hall, Fiamma expresses her immense gratitude for the emperor's generosity. Alphonse Cornaro watches with a cold, severe expression. Without a word to his family, Alphonse turns and walks away. Her father grabs her in distress, asking what she is doing, but she can only apologize to him. As Fiamma flees down the hall, her distraught father is mobbed by other nobles asking about the marriage. She runs, determined that for everyone's sake, no one must learn the unnecessary details of her plan. Suddenly, a hand grabs her arm, stopping her mid-stride, and her eyes widen in shock. Alphonse pulls her into a sudden, close embrace. He stares down at her with a serious, unreadable expression. Held tightly against him, Fiamma looks up in surprise. Alphonse's intense green eyes remain fixed on her. Fiamma quickly regains her composure and offers a curtsy, apologizing for her rudeness. He asks if her actions relate to the proposal, and then questions what she is truly after. Fiamma thinks to herself that her motivation should be obvious. On a balcony, she thinks that everything she's doing is to save her father and her family's future. Alphonse demands an answer, revealing his own plan to warn his family of tragedy if reason fails with Fiamma Grimani. Realizing logic won't work, Fiamma changes her tactic and begins a startling confession. "I've fallen in love with you," she declares, looking up at him with earnest eyes. Under the full moon, she amends her statement, telling him she used to be in love with him. Alphonse looks down at her, skeptical and confused, repeating her word. "Love?" She smiles and confirms her claim, while he silently looks away, unconvinced. Fiamma knows he doesn't believe her, seeing her only as a young girl from the enemy's side. She acknowledges that they barely know each other, and to him, she and her family are simply the enemy. However, she reflects that her confession wasn't a complete lie, as a caption identifies Alphonse as the captain of the Holy Knights. He is praised as the greatest captain in history and a saintly figure who vows to help the common people. Alphonse stands as a revered hero before a crowd of adoring citizens. She remembers a time in her previous life when he saved her. Lost in thought, she thinks to herself, besides. From his perspective, Alphonse finds her claim of love simply too unbelievable. She tells him she is aware of how unbelievable it sounds, and because of that, she intends to prove her feelings to him, her confident smile meeting his impassive gaze. With a final glance, she announces she's leaving and walks away. At a grand estate, Alphonse finds Fiamma in a room filled with gifts and asks what she is doing. She turns to him, stating calmly that she's doing as promised, expressing her feelings. She reminds him she sent a letter about her visit, but he retorts that they aren't married yet. Calmly sipping her tea, Fiamma points out that their marriage has already been decided. She shows images of her respectfully delivering gifts to his parents, calling them her future in-laws. Her expression turns grave as she thinks of the deadly illness that will break out in 2 years. She knows time is short and resolves to earn his trust as quickly as possible to prepare. As she reflects on her frequent visits, she wonders how much time has passed. Sitting alone in a parlor, she muses aloud how long she's been waiting in the room. She notes with quiet frustration that she hasn't even been served tea, a clear sign of disrespect. She asks her maid to inquire how much longer he will be, and the maid dutifully agrees. The maid departs, leaving Fiamma waiting alone in the large, silent room. As she waits, Fiamma surveys the room, noting the expensive paintings, sculptures, and potteries. She observes an antique clock, thinking how the furniture has been maintained and passed down for ages. Standing behind a vase of white flowers, she seems small in the grand, opulent room. Her eyes close for a moment, in quiet thought. A strange thought enters her mind. She imagines Alphonse with cat ears and a tail, holding a feather duster. As she sits on the couch, time continues to pass in the silent room. Crash! A sudden noise startles her, as she wonders why her maid is taking so long. She rushes out to find her maid kneeling beside a shattered vase, being scolded by an older woman who demands to know what happened and accuses her of breaking it. The woman tells Lady Grimani she needs to discipline her maid. Her maid looks up, pleading that it's not her fault and she didn't do it. As the maid cries out in fear, the older woman looks stunned to see who she actually hit. Fiamma has stepped in the way, taking the blow herself, and her maid rushes to her side in horror. A red mark forms on Fiamma's cheek, The older maid stammers, explaining it was an accident, but Fiamma calmly reassures her, saying she won't be blamed. Holding her maid, Fiamma asks the older woman a pointed question. If her maid Viviana broke the vase, why are Fiamma's clothes wet instead of Viviana's? As the older woman stammers, Fiamma points out that she's not in a position to be doing chores like washing dishes. Her sharp, blue eyes fix on the guilty woman, her expression cold and accusatory. Suddenly, Alphen's voice cuts in from the balcony above, asking what all the fuss is about. The older woman reports that Lady Grimani's maid broke a vase, causing him to repeat, "Lady Grimani?" with interest. Fiamma asks if he wants an explanation, but he coldly replies that there is no need. She looks down, thinking that, as always, he still doesn't believe her as he watches from above. Without another word, Alphen begins to descend the stairs. He walks down into the main hall, approaching Fiamma and the servants. Fiamma looks up in confusion, softly saying his name. "Lord Alphond?" He strides forward and takes her hand in his. Alphond gently brings her hand to his lips and kisses it. As he holds her hand, he declares that she is going to be the future Lady Cornaro. Fiamma is stunned, thinking that her future ally has sided with her without question. He apologizes for his incompetence in making her wait and causing her further distress. Alphond looks down at her with a gentle expression as she stands silently beside him. He turns to the older maid with a sharp, intimidating glare. Alphond sternly asks the woman how she explains neglecting to report Lady Grimani's visit. The older maid argues that the Grimani family is of commoner stock, and her intrusion is not permitted. Alphond's eyes glow with intensity. As he asks if she still doesn't understand, he declares that it is she, not Lady Grimani, who is unsuitable for the Cornaro family and orders her to get out. As the woman is dragged away by guards, she begs for forgiveness. Fuming, the woman thinks about her years of devotion and worries what the Duke will say when he finds out she was chased out so easily. Alphond states that Lady Grimani is his official fiancée, approved by the Emperor and the Church, and that his father would never agree to her being treated this way. He calmly tells the departing servant that for insulting his fiancée and disrespecting the Empire and Church, she seems to want to end up in prison. Fiamma glances at her reddened hand as Alphond stands beside her, his point made. Alphen turns and walks away from the scene, leaving her and her maid behind. As he leaves, Fiamma looks on, a bead of sweat on her cheek as she processes his unexpected defense. Alphond declares that no matter the circumstances, blaming a guest and making them uncomfortable must never happen in the Cornaro family. He addresses the remaining staff, ordering them to take care of the mess right now. Fiamma thinks that the fault clearly lies with the servant who tried to frame her. She muses that since the servant was going to be punished anyway, it would be unbecoming for her, the future Duchess, to offer any defense. Alphond internally praises her truly noble response, but notes it wasn't done for his sake. He realized she was trying to expose those who set her up, but he finds it frustrating to argue with an ignorant servant. Fiamma stands resolutely with her maid, having successfully navigated the servant's trap. Alphen takes her hand once more, asking her to pardon him. He gently pulls her closer to him. A painful memory flashes. The dark-haired woman calls a younger Fiamma a disgraceful fake from commoner stock, who can't even hold her wine, as her father angrily defends her. With blood on her lips and gown, Fiamma tells her father she will go and change, asking someone to wait. In a fleeting memory, she sees her father kneeling before her within a large, protective silhouette. A hand reaches for her as she looks up, her blue eyes filled with new determination. In the memory, Alphond holds a glowing, wand-like object with a serious expression. She recalls the moment he used his power to miraculously heal her injury. Back in the present, Alphond offers to escort her to the entrance, and she thanks him. The sound of a mop cleaning the floor marks a quiet transition. Two maids gossip, with one remarking that she's never seen Lord Alphond use holy magic before. Walking her to her carriage, Alphond makes a solemn vow to never let her suffer such distress again. He clarifies that his actions do not imply affection, and she calmly agrees that she understands. Fiamma reflects that she knows full well he doesn't have a shred of love for her. However, she thinks to herself that the day's events have made her certain of her plan. She sees him as the crucial partner who now holds the fate of her family in his hands. Alphond watches her with an unreadable expression as her hair blows in the wind. With a knowing smile, she decides this will be her final visit to the Cornaro mansion before the wedding. She confidently resolves that the next time they meet will be at their wedding ceremony. With her decision made, she turns her back on him and walks away. A close-up reveals her serene yet determined expression. Alphonse stands silently in the hall, his eyes following her as she departs. Her elegant golden carriage rumbles away from the grand estate. Inside the carriage, she reflects on how wary he was, even after she promised not to bother him. She quietly wonders if she is reading too much into his recent actions. Surrounded by the imagery of time, she knows she cannot afford any mistakes and must think carefully. She considers the powerful new enemies she will face after her marriage. Realizing she can't count on his help again, she resolves to earn his trust quickly to save her family. She understands that if her love for him is exposed as a mere facade, everything will be ruined, so she decides she will love and treasure him for real. She wants to cherish him just as she cherishes her beloved father and brother Luca. Looking at an image of Alphonse, she commits to her new, genuine feelings. She begins her preparations, laying out herbs and writing materials to start her plan. Sometime later, a lavish spread of tea and pastries is set out on a table. The scene shifts to the grand Grimani family mansion. A table is piled high with beautifully wrapped gifts. Fianma, now in a yellow dress, counts the presents she has received. Relaxing on a sofa, she concludes the gifts are in return for the one she sent to him. After opening one of the boxes, she finds its contents to be a surprising, yet very Cornaro-esque gift. She examines a jar of saffron and a letter, acknowledging that it's a perfect gift for a fiancé. However, a small part of her comically guesses that he probably didn't put much thought into it at all. She closes her eyes with a weary sigh, contemplating the mixed signals. Suddenly, her younger brother Luca runs in for a surprise hug, happily mumbling something unintelligible. He smiles sweetly when she asks him to repeat it, claiming he couldn't hear himself. She affectionately pinches his blushing cheeks, playfully urging him to say it again. Sighing fondly, she gently chides him, noting that it's good he at least apologized. Luca beams, replying with a bright and cheerful, "Of course." His mood then shifts to concern as he asks if Alphonse doesn't want to marry her, offering to tell the emperor. Fianma calmly looks down, reassuring her worried brother that his fears are untrue. Luca throws a cute tantrum, flailing his arms as he demands to know what's really happening. From the doorway, their father observes the sibling squabble as Luca calls out to him. He smiles warmly and tells Luca to stop, reminding him that this was Fianma's own decision. As his father holds a box, Luca protests, insisting he wants to protect his sister himself. Luca declares with a blush that he bets he could become a knight in 2 years. His father gently boops his nose and reminds him that Alphonse was knighted at a much younger age, questioning if Luca's current skills could truly protect Fianma. The father turns to Fianma, apologizing for the delay caused by his conversation with Luca. Fianma looks on serenely, offering her thanks. Her father smiles, saying this is a great chance for her to show off, but wistfully wishes Lucia was still alive. He imagines that Lucia, shown as an angelic figure, would have knitted lace for her and is surely frustrated in heaven. Her father points out that she also hates to lose, but Fianma playfully retorts that she doesn't want to hear that from him. He knowingly tells her he understands she's giving her all because she's excited for the wedding. Fianma gently touches her hair, lost in thought for a moment. She looks down and quietly begins to explain her reasoning. Taking both of his children's hands, their father says it's time to go home, and Fianma thanks him sincerely. She gives her father a warm, heartfelt smile. As the family shares a happy moment, Fianma recalls a painful memory of her father and Luca's suffering, resolving they will never experience that again. Wedding bells ring out over the grand Cornaro estate, marking the passage of time. 3 months later, Alphonse stands alone at the altar inside a magnificent cathedral. The camera pans over the vast, empty pews of the church where he waits. Dressed in his formal wedding attire, Alphonse admits to himself that he's becoming confused about Fianma's true goal. He looks down with a serious, unreadable expression, pondering her motives. The great doors open as the bride's arrival is announced, and Fianma Grimani begins her walk down the aisle, watched by Luca and Alphonse's father. Her exquisitely detailed wedding veil glitters in the light as she steps forward. Alphonse watches from the altar as she makes her long journey down the sunlit aisle. Luca and a stern-faced older man watch the procession from the pews. From the crowd, a guest thinks about the splendid dress Fianma has prepared. 2 noblewomen gossip, with one remarking the dress is expected, while the other sneers that her lineage still isn't enough for the Cornaro family. Fianma walks forward with a cold and resolute expression, undeterred by the whispers. Alphonse's gaze remains fixed on her as she and her father draw near. She and Alphonse finally stand together before the altar to be wed. Her father looks at her with pride and tells her she's beautiful, while Luca watches with a complicated expression. Luca worries to himself that the problem isn't the groom, but every single one of the guests. His father places a comforting hand on his shoulder, reminding him that it's Fiamma's special day. Both father and son look on, clapping proudly for her. Fiamma and Alphonse stand before the priest, ready to begin the ceremony. With a gentle smile, she looks every bit the perfect bride. She quietly expresses her thanks. The ceremony is filled with beautiful music from a piano and a choir. The couple stands with their backs to the congregation, facing the priest. The priest begins to officiate the wedding ceremony. Alphonse listens as the priest begins the vows, internally questioning the traditional words. Fiamma listens as well, her mind focused on the gravity of the oath. She nervously clasps her hands together as the ceremony proceeds. Her thoughts drift back to her tireless work, wondering if her preparations were a bit excessive. She recalls that in her past life, she heard Alphonse married after her family's downfall, as an image of their broken crust appears. Unsure if his marriage was for love or politics, she resolves to step aside immediately if he has someone he loves, but only after her parents are safe. The priest calls her full name, Fiamma Grimani, asking if she swears her eternal love. Pulled back to the present, she thinks to herself that this moment has come again. Recalling her family's pained past, she reaffirms her resolution to do whatever it takes to save them. She vows not only to save her family, but also to pursue the happiness of those she has dragged into her plans. A maid presents the rings as the priest declares it is time to exchange them as proof of true love. The priest officiates as Alphonse and Fiamma stand at the altar, ready to complete their vows. With a serious expression, Alphonse opens a small box, presenting a dazzling ring to a surprised Fiamma. As they lock eyes, he looks down at her intently while she gazes up with a mix of hope and apprehension. As he places the ring on her finger, a gasp ripples through the crowd as a guest recognizes it as the legendary Terror of the Sea, a jewel reserved for the Cornero Duchess. A guest looks on in disbelief, shocked that Alphonse would give her such a significant family heirloom. The guests whisper amongst themselves, concluding that this gesture, combined with the rumors of her massive dowry, means the Cornero family truly accepts her. A vision of overflowing treasure chests illustrates the gossip that her dowry is worth 500,000 gold coins, stunning the listeners. Watching from the pews, a furious young man with blonde hair and red eyes glares at the couple with intense irritation. Surrounded by roses, the couple stands together at the altar, a picture of matrimonial elegance. Two noblewomen whisper that the lavish display has softened the crowd's opinion, suggesting the rest of the ceremony could be skipped. The ceremony reaches its climax as Alphonse reaches out to lift his bride's veil. He gently lifts her veil, revealing her face as they gaze at each other in a moment of quiet intensity. Hoping for a simple kiss on the cheek, Fiamma thinks he would at least agree to that small gesture. They stand face to face, the air thick with anticipation as he leans in closer. Her eyes widen in shock as he leans in not for her cheek, but for a true kiss on the lips. The moment freezes as he kisses her, her surprised expression captured up close. A soft wash of flowers marks the transition as the kiss deepens. In a flash of surprise, her mind goes blank. The congregation is stunned as Lord Alphonse, of all people, initiates a passionate kiss on the lips. Alphonse's father watches with a knowing smirk, while Fiamma's father beams with pride and Luca puffs out his cheeks in a jealous pout. Fiamma rationalizes the unexpected kiss, telling herself it's only natural for a married couple. Despite her thoughts, a deep blush spreads across her face, betraying her flustered state. She reminds herself that she isn't some sheltered girl, recalling her family's difficult past, though she admits she was still caught off guard. Believing he didn't notice her brief panic, she quickly regains her composure. She looks forward with renewed focus, her momentary surprise replaced with calm determination. A confident smile graces her lips as she concludes that this wedding will be a success after all. The scene shifts to the lavish reception, where the newlyweds greet their guests amidst tiers of decadent pastries. Sharing a happy moment, Fiamma clinks glasses with her younger brother Luca, who is held by their smiling father. Later, the couple arrives at the grand Cornaro mansion, where a man and 3 maids await them on the staircase. Alphonse gently takes her hand, helping her as they prepare to enter their new home together. He leads her into the grand hall, their new life as husband and wife officially beginning. He pauses for a moment, his expression unreadable, as a thought seems to cross his mind. Noticing his hesitation, she looks at him with concern and quietly asks if something is wrong. Dismissing her question with a simple no, he immediately changes the subject, preparing to introduce her to the household staff. A stern, older woman with a white wimple introduces herself as Elda, the head housekeeper. Two younger maids, the red-haired Bona and the purple-haired Mora, step forward and introduce themselves as her personal attendants. Fiamma offers the staff a warm and gracious smile, expressing her pleasure in meeting them. A flashback reveals the menacing face of the previous head housekeeper, who was evidently fired. The new head housekeeper, Elda, stands with an imposing and serious demeanor. Elda's first order of business is to request custody of the very wedding ring Fiamma is wearing. Fiamma is inwardly shocked at the demand to remove her ring on her wedding day, thinking it's a request anyone would fight. She recalls Alphonse's distant behavior, realizing the ring likely holds no real affection or meaning for him. With a serene and accepting smile, she comes to a quiet decision. Presenting an empty ring box, she concludes there's no point in resisting over a meaningless object. Without a word, Fiamma calmly hands the box containing her wedding ring to the head housekeeper. Elda confirms she has taken the ring, holding the box while Alphonse watches silently in the background. Announcing he has other matters to attend to, Alphonse prepares to leave her alone, and Fiamma calmly asks if he will be all right. She gives him a cheerful and understanding smile, showing no sign of disappointment. Acknowledging her acceptance with a slight nod, Alphonse prepares to depart. As he walks away, she notes his cold, businesslike attitude is hardly what one would expect from a newlywed husband. The head housekeeper, Elda, formally directs the new young mistress, Fiamma, to follow her. As they walk, the camera focuses on the stark contrast between Elda's simple black shoes and Fiamma's elegant white dress. Elda leads Fiamma up a grand staircase, thinking to herself that as long as one follows the rules, they won't be rejected. Fiamma reflects that this cold formality is just like the Cornaro family, though she admits Alphonse's initiative in kissing her was a surprise. With a look of bold determination, she resolves to seduce him on their first night together. Elsewhere, in a lavish sitting room, a man in clerical robes speaks with Alphonse's father about the imperial faction. Alphonse's father states that someone would be welcomed into the Cornaro family and that he won't interfere with how she markets herself. The clergyman acknowledges the sentiment, expressing that wishing to marry for love is only natural. Annoyed, Alphonse's father retorts that the clergyman may not be aware of the rumors surrounding Fiamma. A flashback illustrates the vicious gossip, branding her a pitiful and shameless girl known in social circles as the fake young lady. The clergyman smiles knowingly as he addresses the newly arrived Lord Alphonse. With Alphonse now present, the clergyman asks for his opinion on what kind of woman his new bride is. Alphonse sits silently, his expression serious and unreadable as he considers the question. A flashback to half an hour earlier shows Alphonse on a balcony, calling out for someone named Kallio. Inside, he asks Kallio where His Holiness is, and Kallio informs him the Pope has arrived and is speaking with his father. As Kallio helps him dress, Alphonse simply acknowledges the information, his torso exposed. Kallio, a young man with dark hair, hesitates for a moment before asking if he can pose a question. While adjusting his robe, Alphonse asks what it is, and Kallio inquires why he kissed Lady Grimani on the lips during the ceremony. Kallio explains that a kiss on the lips signifies an unbreakable vow, while any other kiss is meaningless. Bowing in apology, Kallio admits his ignorance, and Alphonse advises him to learn the culture of the nobility, which Kallio gratefully accepts. Returning to the present, the clergyman repeats his question about Alphonse's bride, while Alphonse's father looks on, anticipating the answer. Alphonse's father starts to give his own opinion, stating that from his perspective, Fiamma Grimani is. Alphonse's thoughts interrupt, revealing his true opinion. He sees her as a woman unbecoming of a lady, pictured in a fiery red gown. Kallio stands silently in the background, his expression sharp as he observes the conversation. A man with glasses explains that the nobility objects to the Grimani family not because they are newcomers, but because they defy tradition. The narration condemns Fiamma for meddling in men's affairs and her father for shamelessly encouraging her, deeming them unworthy. The clergyman smiles, noting she sounds unladylike, while Alphonse internally agrees that she is just as the rumors describe. Alphonse's eyes narrow slightly, his thoughts trailing off as a thorny background visualizes his inner turmoil. Kallio stands at attention, his face stern and composed. The clergyman leans forward with a serious look, suggesting that if the rumors are true, they must doubt her intentions. He specifically questions the love she claims to feel, his words hovering over an image of Fianma. The men sit in silence for a moment, the tension palpable in the ornate room. Alphon's father scoffs, dismissing the idea that a greedy and cunning lady like her would ever marry for love. The four men, Alphonse, his father the clergyman, and Kallio, are gathered in the grand reception room. Alphonse finally speaks, declaring his intention to keep a close watch on Fianma's movements. He then asks if his answer satisfies all of their questions, effectively ending the interrogation. The clergyman spreads his arms in a gesture of finality, confirming that he has no more questions. With the conversation concluded, Alphonse stands and prepares to take his leave. A sly smirk appears on the clergyman's face as he watches Alphonse depart. In his thoughts, he addresses Alphonse, noting he's heard about his troubles regarding his elder sister. As a crack appears in the background, he silently advises Alphonse to remain faithful to God. Walking away, Alphonse coldly replies that he will continue to act as God guides him. The scene transitions to a luxurious, empty bedroom prepared for the night. Fianma, now in a lace nightgown, stands with a determined expression as her two maids, Bona and Mora, attend to her. A table is set with various cosmetics and perfumes, her shadow looming over it as she thinks about the Cornaro family. The ornate bottles on her vanity table glimmer, hinting at her preparations for the night ahead. Surrounded by flowers, she resolves to show them her true capabilities. The purple-haired maid, Mora, informs Fianma she will bring her clothes and asks her to wait. Fianma watches them go, noting to herself that their gentle demeanor is a pleasant surprise. The two maids, Bona and Mora, exchange nervous glances as they walk away, clearly intimidated by their new mistress. In a lavish room, Fianma sits by the fire, deciding there's no need to rush while waiting for Lord Alphonse to arrive. Her expression is calm and thoughtful as she waits, a flicker of contemplation in her bright blue eyes. A maid's hands carefully pour dark tea from an ornate porcelain teapot into a matching cup. A confident smile plays on Fianma's lips as she realizes she might be able to win her two new maids over to her side. Ah! Suddenly, the lids of the teacups clatter and fall as the maid fumbles with the tray. The red-haired maid, Bona, apologizes profusely for her clumsiness, but Fianma calmly reassures her that it's all right. In her thoughts, Bona worries that the veteran maids must have hated her for coming from a commoner background. Fianma gives the nervous maid a quick, observant glance, her expression sharp and discerning. She notices the small cuts and scratches on the maid's hands, observing that they don't shake much despite her nervousness. Watching the maid, Fianma thinks with empathy that her hands must be in pain from carrying heavy things. A flashback reveals her own past, where after losing everything, she worked tirelessly in a small, under-resourced hospital overlooked by the church. She remembers doing laundry daily, her own hands becoming more ragged than the used sheets she washed. The title card appears against a floral background. This time, I will seduce the Duke, my cold-hearted husband. A collection of ornate beauty products that Fianma has prepared are displayed on a table. Fianma calls out to Bona by name, gently telling her she can leave the tea set as it is. She offers the maid a warm and genuine smile, putting her at ease. Pointing to a jar of cream, Fianma suggests that it would be better if Bona knew how to use it. Surrounded by a bloom of pink roses, Fianma holds out the cream and asks the maid to show her hands. Bona protests that a noble shouldn't touch a maid's filthy hands, but Fianma insists they are the wonderful hands of a worker. Taking Bona's hands, Fianma gently applies the cream, much to the maid's flustered surprise, and affirms her previous statement. Fianma explains that the cream is effective and, importantly, won't sting her damaged skin. Blushing, Bona is amazed and touched to find that the cream doesn't hurt her hands at all. Fianma continues her kind gestures, offering soap for rough hands and oil for messy hair, overwhelming the young maid with gifts. Bona is stunned as Fianma offers yet another product, while the purple-haired maid, Mora, approaches with a tray, watching the scene unfold. Fianma stands serene and beautiful, framed by pomegranates, her gaze thoughtful and strategic. As Mora returns with more items, Fianma tells her she's arrived at the perfect time and should also test the products. The purple-haired maid, Mora, chides her colleague, asking why she didn't stay put and warning her not to do anything unnecessary. Fianma recalls that the scent Lord Alphonse likes is neither the rose nor the pomegranate she wears. Mora is inwardly shocked, wondering how her new mistress already knows which scented oil the master prefers. Bona looks from the basket of perfumes to Fianma, realizing that all of these prepared scents are likely for Lord Alphonse. A sly, knowing smile graces Fiamma's face as she watches her maid's reactions, thinking, "Look at that." She internally notes that her maids are easy to read compared to the scheming merchants she's used to dealing with. Clasping her hands earnestly, Fianma confesses to her maids that her only wish is to receive Lord Alphonse's love. She then asks if it's selfish of her to do everything she possibly can to make that happen, leaving her maids stunned and speechless. With unwavering determination, Fiamma stands before an image of the entire household staff, her decision made. Moved by her mistress's sincerity, Bona enthusiastically promises to help her in any way she can. As Mora looks on, the two maids stand together, their initial apprehension replaced by a newfound resolve, and Fianma silently thanks them. Fianma offers a soft, pleased smile, her first step in winning over the staff a success. Now with her attendants on her side, she announces her first order of business, confirming the procedure for the wedding night ritual. Elsewhere, Alphonse stands alone in a white robe at the top of a grand staircase, lost in thought. He recalls their wedding kiss with a troubled expression, wondering to himself if it was a mistake. Walking down the hall with a heavy heart, he concludes that his goal might be impossible to achieve. He enters the bedroom to find Fianma already there, her soft greeting of, "I've been waiting for you," catching him by surprise. The scene captures a moment of tension, with a determined Fianma surrounded by white lilies and a stoic Alphonse below. Approaching her, Alphonse asks if the scent in the air is lily, and she confirms, asking if he likes the subtle fragrance. He asks what she said, but she quickly dismisses it as nothing and states it's time to begin the ritual. Alphonse begins the rite, holding a golden goblet and reciting a prayer to the sea god for abundance and prosperity. Fianma observes his cold demeanor, realizing he has absolutely no intention of making conversation with her. Alphonse questions Fianna as she stands before him, her posture exuding confidence in her lace nightgown. She moves closer, her hand reaching out to touch him with deliberate grace. Taking his face in her hands, she pulls him into a deep kiss, silently willing him to express himself. As they embrace, the faint, sweet scent of lilies fills the air around them. Alphonse reflects that the moment, the scent, the kiss, it all feels far too perfect to be real. The new chapter begins with a somber reflection on how foolishly emotions sway human beings. His thoughts run wild, believing that while love drives people mad, Fianma's every action is a calculated move of intellect. He concludes that the love she speaks of is a lie, a beautiful mask hiding her true motives. Yet, as he studies her genuinely flushed face, he can't shake the feeling that her reaction isn't fabricated. He decides against questioning her, knowing a clever woman like her would easily deflect his words. Instead, he resolves to find a way to see past her guard to something she cannot disguise. His goal is to witness her true, instinctive self, stripped of all pretenses. A sudden idea strikes him as he gazes at her, a plan forming in his mind. Crash! He deliberately knocks a bottle of perfume to the floor, where it shatters into pieces. He offers a simple apology for his clumsiness, which she gracefully accepts, sharing the blame. As she notes the spill must be cleaned with hot water, her bare foot steps perilously close to the broken glass. Kia! A sudden cry escapes her as she slips on the slick floor. Alphonse catches her in his arms, her surprise evident as she stammers that she's fine. Without warning, he sweeps her off her feet, leaving her to question his sudden action. He coolly states he will carry her to the bath as she blushes, thanking him quietly. He carries her through the grand estate, making his way toward the bathing chamber. The scene settles on the magnificent, ornate bath, filled with steaming water and ready for their arrival. Now both wrapped in towels, Fiamma sits in the bath as Alphonse prepares to join her. As he looks at her, a fleeting thought of desire crosses his mind before he dismisses it. She meets his gaze directly, urging him to stop hesitating and say whatever is on his mind. She begins to make small talk, but her words hang in the air as he remains silent. Changing the subject entirely, he asks if she prepared the bath oil herself, and she confirms that she did. His expression turns serious as he presses her for more information, asking where she acquired it. A flashback reveals a grim past of plagues and forbidden medicine practiced in church-overlooked hospitals. She understands the weight of his question, knowing it comes from Lord Alphonse himself. They face each other in the water, a silent, tense standoff between them. She explains that since his favorite lily scent was unavailable, she created her own blend, which she also used at the wedding. A single bead of sweat rolls down her temple as she waits nervously for his judgment. She knows admitting her actions might seem selfish to him, but she decides that honesty is the only way forward. He watches her intently, his gaze unwavering as he processes her surprising confession. Elsewhere, the maid Mora frets about forgetting the lily oil, but Alphonse intercepts her, offering to deliver it himself. His thoughts drift to the maid's loyalty, with Bona's passionate defense of Fianma echoing in his mind as he approaches the door. Impressed by how quickly she's won the staff's trust, Alphonse instructs Mora to hold the other oils for him. Deciding he should deliver it himself, he takes the tray and walks toward the bath, leaving the maids watching in his wake. Back in the bath, Alphonse presses her again, asking for confirmation that she personally blended the oil. Surrounded by the fragrance of lilies, he gazes at her with a newfound intensity. He realizes the oil's quality requires an advanced technique, finally understanding why someone once called her hard to believe. The skill is so refined, he admits to himself, that even his own esteemed household couldn't replicate it. Leaning in close, his voice low and serious, he demands to know where she learned such a craft. She explains that she studied foreign texts and combined different areas of knowledge to aid her family's trade business. A pleased, almost coy, smile touches her lips as she sees the impact her words have on him. Drawn by her scent and her story, he leans down, his face close to the curve of her neck. Splash! He suddenly pulls her against him in the water, closing the distance between them in a powerful embrace. Her eyes are wide with shock, completely stunned by his unexpected and passionate move. Overwhelmed and submerged in the swirling water, she can only stammer his name in surprise. Holding her close, Alphonse calmly warns Fianma that if she gets any more worked up, she'll collapse. Overwhelmed by his embrace, Fianma lets out a soft, surprised sigh as she clings to him. Later, Alphonse stands over a resting Fianma, who lies exhausted on a chaise lounge, thinking it's impossible for her to stand on her own. Ha! Fianma sighs, blushing with embarrassment as she apologizes internally, certain he must be speechless at her weakness. As Fianma begins to ask about what comes next, Alphonse reassures her he will carry her to bed, sweeping her into his arms before she can protest. Stroking her hair gently, he declares his intention to reset the first night, leaving her stunned by his proposal. He explains that in her current condition, the ritual would be a burden, and she realizes with dismay that her seduction attempt has utterly failed. Recalling the plan for an unconsummated marriage, she clutches his robe as he wryly notes how quickly she shifts between blushing and being pale. Pressing on, she insists he should carry out his duty to the end. She quickly dismisses her own words, telling herself not to panic as she realizes clinging will only push him further away. After tucking her into bed, he calmly promises to fulfill his duty, rescheduling their first night ceremony for 3 days from now. He leans in close, his face just inches from hers as she looks up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. As he stands by her bedside, Fianma thanks him, remarking with sincerity that he is a very kind person. A ghost of a smile touches his lips as he thoughtfully repeats her words. Kind, you say, surrounded by the memory of lilies. Fianma sleeps peacefully, unaware of the thorny path that lies beneath the illusion of sweet flowers. Bang, bang! In a desperate flashback, a younger Fianma hammers on a door, begging for medicine for her collapsed father. With tears streaming down her face, she cries out that even holy magic isn't working, and pleads for help. A church official coldly rebukes her for relying on medicine, questioning her faith, but she angrily retorts that faith is irrelevant. She argues passionately that even church nobles are falling ill, and begs him to release the medicine before the disease spreads further. The official furiously accuses her of blasphemy and threatens divine punishment before turning his back on her. Her determined expression fades into a memory of spotting the Cornaro family, including a younger Alphonse for the first time. She runs toward them, desperately proposing that their houses join forces. A rumor is recalled, suggesting the church's stance against medicine is a lie to hide their lack of funds for development. Fiamma boldly offers her family's entire fortune to develop a cure, while Alphonse silently wonders if the rumor is true. Her hand clenches as she reflects on the last hope she had left. A foot steps onto a carriage step, marking a pivotal departure or arrival. Facing the priest, Fiamma questions his refusal of her family's renowned medical knowledge. He furiously orders her to leave, eager for his meeting with Alphonse. Outside, Alphonse and his father watch from beside their carriage as the scene unfolds. The flashback ends, transitioning back to the present with a solemn gaze shared between Fianma and Alphonse. Waking in her bed, Fianma is greeted by a reddish-haired maid watching over her. The maid informs her it's nearly time for breakfast, but offers to let her rest if she isn't feeling well. Now standing, Fianma learns from the maid that Alphonse slept beside her but left early in the morning. The maid explains that Alphonse trains early and relayed a stern warning to avoid the blunders of the previous head housekeeper. A faint, clever smile plays on Fianma's lips as she takes in the information. Gazing upon the grand hall, she steels her resolve for the day ahead. An elegant, light purple-haired woman, the Duchess, walks through the hall, noting that her duty to assist Fianma begins today. The Duchess guides Fianma, pointing out the Forbidden East Annex and warning her not to enter without permission. Fianma agrees readily, though a hint of tension remains in her expression. She internally observes that her mother-in-law seems unaware of the planned white marriage and that her father-in-law was uncharacteristically quiet at breakfast. Recalling the morning meal, she muses that, while not exactly kind, her father-in-law's behavior was certainly a change. The Duchess leads her to a study, explaining that her first task is to learn how to read the household's purchase orders. The Duchess's thoughts reveal her identity as a modest, youthfully beautiful woman from the Cornaro branch family. Fianma recognizes the Duchess's skill in medicine and management of the family's herb garden, resolving that she must win her over. Having finished her explanation of the basics, the Duchess suggests they take a break for tea. During tea, Fianma thanks the Duchess for her gifts and offers to give her something in return. The Duchess politely declines, stating that seeing Fianma happy with the gifts is all the reward she needs. Setting down her cup, the Duchess notes that as family they have time, but she has one question for her now. Fianma listens with a serious and attentive expression, ready for the inquiry. The Duchess gets straight to the point, asking why Fianma specifically chose to gift her silk thread. The Duchess admits to herself that she, too, had been wondering about the motive behind Fianma's curious gift. The Duchess stands elegantly amidst flowers, revealing the end of her question about the silk thread gift. Fianma reflects that while the mansion is filled with historical masterpieces, something felt slightly out of place. Her thought continues as she recalls that only a single piece of lace reflected modern trends. She explains to the Duchess that she assumed the modern lace was a reflection of her meticulous management. Fianma then asks if the handmade quality of her gift was too obvious, or if it looked poorly made. The Duchess internally admits that the gift's finish was, in fact, exquisite. She explains that since the stern father-in-law would never approve such a luxury purchase, she deduced Fianma must have made it herself. Thinking of her husband's strict nature, the Duchess recalls deciding it was best not to mention the new lace. She confirms with Fianma that her deduction about the need for secrecy was correct. The Duchess smiles, privately noting that had her husband found out, Fianma would have been lectured for at least a month. Fianma is taken aback as she realizes her mother-in-law's name is Angela. Visibly moved, Angela thinks to herself that she never knew being praised for her quiet work could bring such happiness. Fianma internally praises Angela's dedication, noting that she replaces the lace daily throughout the mansion. She muses that her father-in-law, however, remains completely oblivious to Angela's efforts. A dark vision reveals the oppressive rules and lack of luxuries that bind the Lord's wife, chaining her to duty. Fianma's expression hardens with silent resolve. Thinking she is just like her own mother, Fianma's demeanor softens with a serene, confident glow. A memory surfaces of a woman teaching another to embroider, passing it off as a simple part of a lady's upbringing. Angela agrees to teach her embroidery, but suggests they first hold a tea party for the relatives, noting the busy life of newlyweds. Changing the subject, Angela warmly asks Fianma about her own personal likes and preferences. Fianma thanks her for the kind gesture, but reminds herself not to let her guard down completely. Her thoughts reveal a secret. The tea she prepared for them contains herbs that gently elevate the mood. Sipping her tea, she concludes that only someone with a heightened sense of smell, like her, would notice the subtle blend. Fianma wonders if Angela is genuinely enjoying their talk, or is strategically trying to uncover her true feelings. Angela rises, announcing her decision to provide the finest dress and laces for Fianma's upcoming debut as a Cornaro. Angela smiles warmly while Fianma watches, seemingly content with the arrangement. 2 days later, the family is gathered for another meal at the formally set dinner table. The father-in-law formally requests Fianma's help in the herb garden that morning. As Alphonse looks on, he continues outlining the day's schedule, which includes visiting the church pharmacy, and tells her to change into practical clothes. Fianma smiles and graciously accepts her mother-in-law's instructions. She rises and exits the dining room, leaving the three family members behind at the table. Patan, the grand doors swing shut behind her. The father-in-law warns the others to be cautious, reminding them that she is the sharp-minded daughter of the Grimani family. Alphonse calmly agrees with his father's assessment, while Angela covers her mouth thoughtfully. Angela maintains a quiet, pensive expression. She subtly sends a stream of sparkling energy toward Alphonse from across the table. Alphonse watches his mother's action with a sharp, knowing gaze. Now outside, Angela formally presents Fianma with the impressive Cornaro family herb garden. Dressed for work, Fianma admits the garden is impressive, but casually mentions that herb farms in the countryside are even larger. Angela warns her that many plants are dangerous if touched, causing Fianma to blush with slight surprise. Fianna smiles brightly, thanking her for the helpful warning. Angela instructs her to begin by drawing water, and Fianma recognizes that even this simple task is a significant first step. She looks on with a determined, confident expression, ready for the challenge. Fianma knows her true mission, to find one specific, crucial herb hidden somewhere in the vast garden. She stops abruptly, her eyes widening in shock as she spots something unexpected among the plants. In complete disbelief, she whispers, "No way," wondering how a certain herb could possibly be growing here. Stepping back, she identifies the plant as a rose soother and questions why it's hidden among common weeds. Her expression fills with deep concern as she processes the impossible discovery. A flashback explains that rose soother is the key ingredient to cure the rose fever, an illness she suffered from in her past life. The sickness, common among the populace, was often mistaken by nobles for the more deadly death plague, leading to a dangerously widespread and untraced infection. Fianna reaffirms her mission to find the rose soother herb to prevent the spread of rose fever. Through a window's reflection, Angela notes that the weeds are growing again, and gardeners are not permitted in the herb garden. Angela then informs a stunned Fianma that from now on, she will be responsible for the weeding. Holding a weed, Angela acknowledges Fianma's inexperience, but explains that all Cornaro family members learn to tend plants from a young age. As Angela effortlessly plucks a weed, a startled Fianma watches, realizing this is a test. Flustered but determined, Fianma insists on pulling the weeds herself. A gloved hand uses a trowel to uproot a plant as Angela compliments Fianma on her good work. Angela tells Fianma she must first learn the plant's characteristics and begins the lesson with the nearest flower bed. A view of the greenhouse reveals that most plants are for luxury and beauty, with the roots being their most vital part. Fianma asks if she can pose a question, and Angela graciously gives her permission. Fianma inquires if medicinal plants are grown elsewhere, but Angela states they rely on the church's healing magic. Fianma argues they should still be grown just in case. Angela warns that human magic is limited, and medicine can be toxic if misused, justifying why it isn't used lightly. She firmly reminds Fianma that, as a Cornaro, she must remember their family's principles. With a determined grip on her trowel, Fianma quietly agrees, understanding the hidden message. Angela announces she must hurry to deliver medicine to the pharmacy, then tells someone to wait outside while she mails a letter. Now wearing a blue cloak, Fianma walks through a grand estate, recalling Angela's words that brought her here. She arrives before a large, ornate building, ready to fulfill her task. Squeak. Her attention is drawn by a small, spiky creature darting past her feet. A brief memory flashes of hands wringing a cloth in a basin of water. In a quick flashback, a younger Fianma in a nurse's uniform looks down in surprise while tending to someone. The creature is revealed to be a small, adorable hedgehog looking up curiously. A woman in a nun's habit named Jana rushes to catch the hedgehog, but Fianma questions if it's bad luck to capture a creature of happiness. Jana laughs heartily, dismissing Fianma's superstitions as nonsense. Fianma turns away with a serious expression, contemplating the woman's response. Thinking about how hedgehogs can safely collect rare materials, she feels lucky to learn this right after discovering the rose soother. Suddenly, the hedgehog puffs up its quills and charges aggressively toward a surprised Fianma. Fianma watches with a worried expression, realizing things are never as easy as they seem. Pushing open the grand doors, she decides a simple prayer couldn't hurt while she waits. The moment she enters, she's hit by the scent of blood and sees a worried crowd gathered in the main hall. Inside, a distraught man kneels while holding a badly injured young girl, wrapped in bandages. The man desperately begs a priest to save his daughter, explaining she was hit by a carriage. The priest responds with a cold expression, stating that although he wants to help, he cannot. As the father pleads for immediate help, onlookers murmur about the poor girl's fate. The crowd whispers that the priest is busy treating a noble who visits weekly for back pain. Fiona listens to the people's bitter complaints, recognizing the familiar injustice from the days of the pandemic. Recognizing the priest from her past, she touches her brooch, deciding to offer what she has, even without cash. The priest angrily dismisses the father's pleas, shouting that he is too stubborn and must wait his turn. A brilliant light shines as a voice declares they will donate everything they have to save the girl instantly. The priest and the father turn in shock to see Fiona holding out her glowing, valuable brooch. Fiona's eyes blaze with an intense blue light, her gaze fixed on the priest with unwavering resolve. The priest smirks greedily, refusing the brooch, prompting Fiona to offer her ornate necklace as well, assuming he wants more. With a sharp tug, she prepares to remove the valuable accessory from her cloak. She looks up in surprise as her action is suddenly interrupted. A hand rests on her shoulder, and she turns to see Alphonse has arrived behind her. Alphonse stares ahead with cold, glowing yellow eyes, his presence commanding the room. The scene shifts to a moment ago, showing knights training intensely in a castle courtyard. The sharp clang of swords echoes as two blades clash under the bright sun. Alphonse deftly disarms a red-haired knight, who sighs that he has lost once again. The defeated knight notes that Alphonse seems unusually guarded, and even faster today. As the knight gets up, complaining about the unfair match, he gasps as Alphonse's sword is suddenly at his throat again. Holding his sword to the red-haired knight's throat, Alphonse stands over his defeated opponent. The knight tries to reason with his captain, quoting scripture about rest, but Alphonse bluntly tells him to shut up. Alphonse sternly instructs the knight to prepare thoroughly for their next training session. With a cheerful, "Okay," the red-haired knight and his comrades readily agree. The red-haired knight playfully leans in close to Alphonse, a mischievous grin on his face. Splat! After a sudden strike from Alphonse, the knight complains about being hit before he could even ask his question. The knight explains he was just worried, noting Alphonse's unusual composure and wondering if something happened with his wife. He puts an arm around Alphonse, slyly offering to take him to a recommended place if he's unsatisfied. Ugh! In a swift motion, Alphonse flips the knight over his shoulder, sending him flying through the air. As the red-haired knight lies twisted on the ground, Alphonse casually cracks his knuckles. Alphonse addresses a black-haired knight named Gerald, praising his vigilance but reminding him that teamwork is crucial in real combat. The red-haired knight voices his concern about Alphonse getting along with the phony Lady Grimani. A faint, thoughtful smile touches Alphonse's lips as he listens. A breathless knight rushes in, calling for the captain of the Holy Knights. He reports trouble during the prayer, and a quick flash reveals Fiona collapsed on the church floor, grabbing Alphonse's full attention. With determined urgency, Alphonse rushes toward the grand church. Arriving at the scene, Alphonse overhears Fiona defiantly offering her necklace as well. As Gerald admires Fiona's reliability and beauty, the red-haired knight blushes, wishing he could get to know her. Thump! Alphonse's foot lands heavily as he coldly declares, "That's my wife," stunning the red-haired knight. Alphonse pulls Fiona into a protective embrace from behind, and she turns in shock, asking why he's there. Standing beside him, Fiona watches with a surprised expression as Alphonse assesses the situation. Alphonse kneels before the injured girl, his hand beginning to glow with a gentle, healing light. A brilliant aura of holy magic radiates from Alphonse's hand, enveloping the young girl in a powerful healing spell. The crowd gasps, recognizing the captain's holy magic, which they know is reserved only for true emergencies. Overcome with emotion, the father clutches his healed daughter, weeping with gratitude for the captain's intervention. Fiona quietly observes Alphonse as he tends to the child. Fiona thinks the situation is a disgrace, and Alphonse sternly asks her to refuse his help if she's just going to cause more commotion. He offers his handkerchief, but she rejects it, saying she doesn't need it, leaving him momentarily surprised. Fiona turns and walks away from the hall, leaving Alphonse and his knights behind. Alone in the gardens, she regrets causing a scene, admitting the church always reminds her of a painful day. A brief memory shows her confronting the priest in the past. Still waiting for Angela, Fiona wonders what to do when she spots a small hedgehog curled up nearby. A nun approaches from behind, as Fiona wonders if it's the same hedgehog from before. The nun explains that abandoning rare animals at the church has become a troubling trend among the imperial faction. She reveals that an unknown illness has caused numerous pet deaths, and now no one will take in the sick hedgehog. The nun sadly concludes that the best she can do is pray for the creature, implying it's doomed to die. Fianma gazes at the small, wounded hedgehog, moved by its desperate struggle to survive. To the nun's complete shock, Fianma declares she will treat the creature's wounds and gently picks it up. She cradles the whimpering hedgehog in her hands with a warm, compassionate smile. The nun warns her not to treat it so lightly, admitting even she would save it if she could. The nun explains the hedgehog is too weak to be saved even by holy magic, which Fianma acknowledges is powerful. Fianma reflects that holy magic is neither all-powerful nor impartial, reaffirming her own purpose to save those who are overlooked. Announcing she is a lady of the Cornaro family, Fianma warns the stunned nun not to underestimate her. With unwavering confidence, Fianma declares she will heal the hedgehog right there on the spot. The skeptical nun questions her decision to treat it here and now, to which Fianma calmly confirms. The nun dismisses her, stating there's no way she can possibly succeed, but Fianma's expression remains determined. In a flashback, the priest instructs the nun to handle Fianma with care, labeling her an imposter. Kibi, the hedgehog suddenly extends its sharp quills, pricking Fianma's hands. While the nun urges caution, Fianma remains unfazed, stating that this reaction is entirely within her expectations. The nun internally scoffs, convinced a social climber from the countryside can't possibly succeed, and decides to let her fail. Examining the small hedgehog, Fianma internally notes its peculiar symptoms. Fianma turns to address the shocked nun beside her, calling for the priestess's attention. The nun bows, explaining she is only an apprentice without holy magic, but Fianma clarifies that's not what she needs. Leaning closer, Fianma points out the white powder around the hedgehog's face, leaving the nun confused. Fianma continues her diagnosis, explaining that its quills are falling out, revealing patches of skin. Comparing the symptoms to a text, she notes the inflamed skin, and the nun realizes Fianma is correct. Fianma confidently diagnoses the issue as a parasitic infection, stunning the nun with her knowledge. With a newfound respect for Fianma, the nun listens as she's tasked with getting insect repellent, anti-inflammatories, and gauze from the pharmacy. Fianma declares with quiet determination that while the nun is gone, she will begin removing the parasites herself. The nun reflects with shame that she had given up immediately, assuming she was useless without holy magic. Kneeling beside the frightened creature, Fianma softly reassures it that she is not its enemy. As Fianma begins her work, the nun watches with rapt attention, her perception of the noble lady changing. Impressed and moved by Fianma's kindness and skill, the nun exclaims with admiration. The flustered nun profusely apologizes for her earlier rude and skeptical behavior toward Fianma. Vowing to get the supplies immediately, she rushes off as Fianma thanks her for the help. Pausing with a bright smile, the apprentice priestess formally introduces herself as Stella. Fianma warmly smiles back while cradling the hedgehog, telling Stella that she's counting on her. Stella hurries off on her errand, determined to assist Fianma. Later, after they've treated the creature, the bandaged hedgehog rests comfortably in a basket. As night falls, Fianma sits alone in her room, reflecting on the long, eventful day. At dinner, she feels relieved to have gotten permission to keep the pet, believing her encounter with the good luck hedgehog was fated. She smiles to herself, thinking the hedgehog is a special connection between her and Lord Alphonse. The silver-haired woman at the table clasps her hands in delight, calling the hedgehog their Cupid, while an older man scowls. The silver-haired man begins to lecture Fianma about making a scene at the church. Fianma sits through her father's lengthy lecture with a patient but weary expression. After the meal, Fianma stands by a birdcage, glad that despite the trouble, she's gained a new ally for making medicine. She smiles softly, then looks at the empty cage with a hint of confusion. Looking at the bandaged hedgehog now inside the cage, she tells it that once it's better, it will help her gather ingredients and join her for tea. She peers down at the sleeping creature, waiting for a sign of agreement. A gentle, hopeful smile graces Fianma's lips as she watches her new companion. She gives the sleeping hedgehog a gentle poke on its soft cheek. Knock, knock. A sudden knock at her door startles her from her quiet moment. She turns from the cage, her expression serious as she looks toward the sound. Alphonse stands in her doorway, holding her folded cloak, telling her she forgot it. Fianma accepts the cloak, apologizing for bothering him when he must be tired from his duties. Holding the item, she feels a pang of awkwardness in his presence. Alphonse walks into the room, asking if she's unwell, since he heard she barely ate at dinner. She reassures him that she just lacks an appetite, and that he shouldn't worry. He steps closer, catching her by surprise as she looks up at him. Light blush dusts her cheeks as she looks at him with a flustered expression. They stand facing each other in the quiet room, an unspoken tension between them. Noting her demeanor, Alphonse gently suggests they can postpone their plans for another day if she's not feeling well. Fianma quickly denies being unwell, her eyes wide with surprise at his suggestion. She admits she's just unsettled by the day's events and didn't expect him to show up at the church earlier. Her expression becomes guarded as she recalls the dramatic confrontation. Alphonse questions why she didn't ask for help, stating his mother would have sent a healer if she just used his family's name. He looks at her with a calm but questioning gaze, wanting to understand her actions. Alphonse reminds her that she is now a member of the Cornero family, and helping each other should be natural. Fianma internally admits that while she instinctively used the Cornero name to save the hedgehog, she doesn't truly feel like she belongs. She feels like an outsider, convinced that even Alphonse doesn't believe her when she says she loves him. Alphonse gently asks Fianma to come to him first if any trouble arises, and she looks down, quietly agreeing. Now that the misunderstanding is resolved, he turns his attention to their plans for the evening. Standing in the lavish bedroom, Fianma is startled by his implicit suggestion. She quickly clarifies that it's not that she doesn't want to be with him. Alphonse listens intently, his expression calm and unreadable. He steps closer, causing a deep blush to spread across her face as she looks up at him. Her hand reaches out tentatively, touching the laces of his shirt. As he looks down at her, Fianma turns her head away, her cheeks still flushed. He wonders why she tries so desperately to express her feelings, questioning what secret she could be hiding. Holding her close, he hopes that tonight he might finally glimpse her hidden truth. The scene transitions to the couple's ornate bedroom later that night. In a tender embrace, he holds her close. Fianma blushes as he leans in to kiss her shoulder. He gazes down at her with a soft, affectionate expression. Alphonse gently lays her back onto the bed, supporting her with his arm. As he lays her down, she lets out a small, surprised, "Huh." He positions himself over her on the bed. He leans in close, his lips nearing her neck. Lying beneath him, Fianma feels overwhelmed, thinking that even breathing takes all her strength. She notes with surprise that, despite the newness of the moment, Lord Alphonse seems as composed as ever. He leans over her and softly asks if it hurts. A close-up reveals his focused, gentle expression. Her mind drifts, thinking only of Lord Alphonse in that intimate moment. She steels her resolve, deciding she will fulfill her duty. They lie together, wrapped in an embrace. With her eyes closed, Fianma accepts the moment. A dark memory surfaces of a grim figure warning of a death plague in a snowy graveyard, while a bandaged victim cries that people are dying. In the flashback, Fianma pleads with skeptical villagers to investigate her hometown, wanting to save them all from the plague. A painful memory shows her isolated in a spotlight, questioning why she must die while the disbelievers live. Gasp! Fianma wakes up with a start, her dream leaving her breathless. Covering her face, she thinks that no matter how much time passes, she can never get used to that memory. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she assumes Alphonse is already training, musing that one night together changes nothing. She recalls a kind letter from him, telling her not to overdo things if she's unwell, and not to worry about her parents. With a sad expression, she holds the letter, a reminder of his distant kindness. A brief memory shows Alphonse gently pulling the covers over her as she slept. Two maids enter her chambers, wishing her a good morning and asking what she would like for breakfast. Fianma asks the maids if Lord Alphonse has returned from his morning training. The maids reply that he has not, noting that it's unusual for him to be late for breakfast. Meanwhile, at the training grounds, Gerald comments on Alphonse's impressive energy so early in the morning. The red-haired knight remarks that Alphonse's intense focus is also rare, and explains his own new dedication is due to being scolded. He cheerfully wishes his captain a good morning. Alphonse greets his knights, telling them he'll spar with each of them in turn. The other knights watch in admiration, remarking on the captain's flawless form and unbeatable skill. The red-haired knight reflects that, while yesterday was intense, today seems even more so. Alphonse stands ready, his expression sharp and focused. The holy knights raise their swords together, preparing for the sparring session. With a swift motion, Alphonse disarms one of his men, chiding him for holding back. His eyes are filled with fierce determination as he continues the training bout. One by one, The knights are swiftly and effortlessly defeated by their captain. Alphonse stands victorious and unchallenged amidst his exhausted knights on the training ground. One of the defeated knights begs to spar again, but Gerald tells him to wait. Gerald advises the knight not to overdo it during simple morning training, and the knight reluctantly understands. The black-haired knight argues that he isn't like the vice captain, prompting an indignant "hey" from Gerald. Alphonse calmly intervenes, telling them to take a break first, which they both accept. As the exhausted knights recover, the determined black-haired knight walks across the courtyard. Gerald approaches his captain, suggesting that perhaps Alphonse is the one who's overdoing it. Alphonse remains silent, his profile turned away with a contemplative expression. Gerald observes that Alphonse is in a bad mood again, noting that it's even worse than yesterday. Trying to be friendly, Gerald puts an arm around Alphonse's shoulder, feigning understanding. He leans in close, confidently stating that Alphonse can't fool him after 10 years of knowing each other. As Gerald speaks, Alphonse's expression hardens with annoyance. Gerald suddenly cries out in pain. Alphonse, clutching his own wrist, coldly asks if Gerald is satisfied now. A blushing and flustered Gerald asks if Alphonse is sure he's not lying about what's bothering him. Alphonse simply confirms with a "yeah" and walks away, leaving Gerald to wonder about yesterday's events. In a flashback, a blonde woman in a grand hall thanks someone for a jacket but politely declines it. Alphonse looks on, surprised, as the woman admits her actions may not have been ladylike. With conviction, she declares that she has done nothing to be ashamed of before God. She then turns and walks confidently toward the exit, leaving Alphonse watching her go. A man in white clerical robes is startled by the sound of approaching footsteps. He stammers nervously as he faces the oncoming person. Alphonse approaches the clergyman, calling his recent actions disgraceful. Rumble! As the knights watch, Alphonse unleashes a torrent of blue holy magic, sending the clergyman flying. The knights recognize the powerful holy magic of judgment, while Gerald watches with a knowing smirk. Surrounded by a draconic aura of magic, Alphonse looms over the fallen man, clarifying that he was the one being called a disgrace. With a cold and focused gaze, Alphonse continues his judgment. The clergyman desperately claims the money was forced on him, but Alphonse retorts that taking payment for a service he didn't render is a breach of contract. Alphonse prepares to strike again, gathering holy energy in his hand. A powerful wave of holy magic erupts from the ground. The clergyman lies defeated on the wet stone floor as Alphonse stands over him. Alphonse turns to the gathered onlookers and formally apologizes for the disturbance. He acknowledges that they witnessed an unsightly scene and asks that they keep it to themselves. For the sake of his wife's honor, he requests their silence, and the crowd looks on with understanding. Back in the present, Gerald tells his fellow knight that their half-hour break is over, and it's time to resume training. The knights jog back to their positions on the training grounds. The flashback ends, and Gerald watches his captain with a look of concern. Gerald reflects on Alphonse's uncharacteristic loss of control, realizing it was because his wife had been insulted. A smile crosses Gerald's face as he relaxes, deciding he doesn't mind the drama as long as it's interesting. Looking toward the manor, he muses that he will continue to observe how things unfold. As Alphonse returns to the manor, Fianma is there to greet him, welcoming him back. He informs her that he's already eaten breakfast, leaving her slightly surprised. Fianma asks if there was a problem, noting his lateness, but Alphonse assures her nothing was wrong. She looks at him skeptically, thinking to herself that he seems a little off. A dark premonition of a noose flashes in her mind, which she dismisses as paranoia from recent bad dreams, but as she turns to leave, Alphonse stops her. He suddenly reaches out and grabs her wrist. Holding her arm, he stops her from walking away, prompting her to ask if something is the matter. Fianma looks up at him with wide, questioning eyes. Her expression softens into a gentle, knowing smile. They stand facing one another, an unspoken tension hanging in the air. Fianma closes her eyes and smiles peacefully. Alphonse calmly asks, "Is that so?" as he looks down at Fianma. Fianma resolves that for the rest of her life, he will never have to worry about her conceiving a child. Fianma tells the maids she has a gift for her mother-in-law and sends them ahead to the study, claiming she left it in her room. Click! Her hand turns the key, locking the door behind her. Slam! She leans against the locked door, a sense of unease settling over her. Stealing her resolve, she thinks, "All right then," and prepares for what she must do. She opens a drawer, revealing a hidden wooden box beneath some papers. Inside the box lies a pouch of strange, bead-like objects. She reminds herself not to push her luck, as there's always a chance of conceiving. With a somber look, she pours a handful of the small green pills from the pouch. Her blue eyes are filled with unwavering determination as she prepares to take the medicine. A flashback reveals that as soon as the marriage was settled, she began preparing a special medicine. She recalls preparing this medicine in secret, standing alone in a dimly lit room. She remembers her past life, where pregnant women and infants were at high risk, and she witnessed many babies die from illness. Haunted by the past, she fears catching the plague again, which would mean either her child suffering the same fate or being left behind if she dies. A moment of quiet contemplation washes over her, her expression serene but sad. She closes the jar of pills, confirming to herself that her supply is sufficient. Holding the jar, she acknowledges that this medicine is considered heresy, as a noble woman's primary duty is to bear children. She resolves to keep her secret safe, ensuring no one ever knows she takes this medicine, or that it even exists. She carefully hides the evidence of her secret actions. She laments that the medical knowledge she possesses, condemned as heresy, could save countless lives from more than just the plague if people would only accept it. Pan! She snaps herself out of her reverie, chiding herself for being greedy. In the greenhouse, the silver-haired woman sternly reminds Fianma that, as a Cornero, her actions reflect on the family and must not be taken lightly. Fianma reflects on the danger, acknowledging that medicine should not be handled carelessly and that even her own drug has side effects. Cue! A sudden cry from the corner of the room startles Fianma. The hedgehog wriggles playfully, but Fianma knows she can't linger too long or she'll arouse suspicion. Deciding it's time to leave, she tells the hedgehog in the cage that she's going now. In the study, surrounded by stacks of paper, the matriarch looks up in surprise. Her eyes widen slightly, a look of genuine surprise on her face. The matriarch asks about the drying herbs, and Fianma confirms she has already sorted them. The matriarch is impressed, wondering how Fianma can already distinguish the dried herbs when they all look so similar. A cute doodle shows Fianma as a dog, attributing her skill to a sharp nose, much to a maid's admiration. Fianma offers to tend the garden, but her mother-in-law redirects her, stating they must prepare for tomorrow's dinner gathering instead. The matriarch smiles with pleasant anticipation, leaving Fianma a bit taken aback. As maids bring in a large chest, the matriarch knowingly asks Fianma if she's aware of how thrifty her husband is. The matriarch explains the Cornero tradition of passing down dresses, noting the real challenge is tailoring the old gowns to a new style, something she once struggled with herself. Eager to find the perfect fit, she tells Fianma, "I want to choose something that suits you," and encourages her to try on all the dresses. The room is now filled with jewelry, ribbons, and tailoring tools, evidence of an extensive fitting session. As dinner time approaches, a maid tries to interrupt, but the determined matriarch insists on just a little more time to perfect Fianma's look. With a flustered expression, she pleads for just a bit more time. Alphonse appears at the door, coolly informing his mother that father's patience is wearing thin. Dressed in an exquisite gown and surrounded by roses, Fianma thinks, "Oh dear." Alphonse is momentarily taken aback by the scene before him. Fianma recalls a portrait of a man named Benedetto, remembering that he became a clergyman. She explains the unusual succession. Despite Alphonse being the firstborn who joined the clergy, it was the second son who was meant to inherit. Alphonse dryly confirms this is a family tradition, and his mother agrees. The matriarch reflects proudly, stating that this very tradition is what built the Cornero family's strength. Alphonse smirks, warning his mother that she'd better hurry before father storms in. His momentary smile fades, replaced by a cool, unreadable gaze. Fianma quietly observes the complex exchange between mother and son. Holding a delicate gold necklace, Alphonse decides this one would be best. Looking at the elegant embroidery on her dress, Fianma thinks to herself that it's not bad at all. Now adorned with the necklace and a matching tiara, Fianma looks toward Alphonse with a neutral expression. The full splendor of Fianma's dark green gown, detailed with gold and blue lace, is displayed. Alphonse looks down at Fianma with a faint smile, deciding that they will go with this one. Alphonse and Fianma share a close, intimate moment, looking into each other's eyes. Fianma places a hand on her chest, a look of mild surprise on her face. Watching Alphonse and his mother together, Fianma hopes that they have grown a little closer. Fianma resolves to get along with Alphonse's siblings as well, her thoughts accompanied by images of his brother and sister. The scene shifts to the grand Cornero manor under the light of a full moon. Tiesk. In a lavish room, an angry red-haired man demands another drink while a servant warns him about the family gathering tomorrow. A silver-haired woman in a green gown looks down at the intoxicated man sprawled on the couch, asking if he's truly happy to be back. The red-haired man glares up at her, angrily reminding her that she's his wife now, not a Cornaro. He furiously declares he's sleeping outside tonight, unable to relax next to a stiff woman like her. The silver-haired woman stands stoically as he berates her, telling her to learn how to be a proper woman. The next day, servants bustle about the manor, carrying in chests and furniture in preparation for the gathering. The matriarch and another woman gasp in surprise as they look towards the manor's entrance, while Fianma observes them. Fianna watches the scene unfold with a small, knowing smile. The matriarch clasps her hands in delight, exclaiming that he's here. She rushes toward the open doors with outstretched arms, warmly welcoming back Benedetto. Benedetto, a handsome silver-haired man in white robes, smiles warmly and greets Fianma by name. Turning his attention to Fianma, Benedetto apologizes for only being able to greet her briefly during the wedding. Fianma smiles graciously and replies that she would love that. She privately notes how very different Benedetto seems from Lord Alphonse. As Benedetto speaks gently to a crowd, the narration describes him as slender, gentle, and easy to get along with. A divine aura surrounds Benedetto, as it's revealed he's a prodigy, a young cardinal, second only to the Pope. Fianma follows Benedetto and the matriarch, resolving not to let her guard down, as her mother-in-law notes that someone named Diana is late. A magnificent blue and gold carriage pulls up to the manor's entrance. The matriarch smiles brightly, announcing that it looks like she has just arrived. She excitedly excuses herself to go greet Diana and the others. Benedetto watches her go, calmly saying he understands. Fianma gestures for Benedetto to follow her, and he politely thanks her. Fianma and Benedetto walk side by side down the opulent hallway. A family tree illustrates the challenges faced by families with clergy members who cannot marry or have children, making it difficult to build factions. The narrative explains the prestigious Cornaro family, led by the patriarch and his sons, overcame these challenges. A wilting flower symbolizes the growing difficulty of maintaining order as the family expanded, with some straying from discipline. The entire Cornaro family is gathered for a formal dinner in a grand dining hall. A silver-haired woman, introduced as Lady Diana, the only daughter of the Cornaro family, offers someone more food. Diana is further identified as Lord Alphen's elder sister. Fianma recalls that Diana surprisingly had a love marriage, going against her father's wishes, remembering a man proposing to her with a red rose. The red-haired man at the table, Diana's husband, smiles and accepts her offer. He then enthusiastically declares that he wants their own chef to learn how to make the dish. Across the table, Alphen's hand clenches his spoon in silent irritation. The family patriarch calmly asks a maid named Ida to speak with the head chef, and she complies. The matriarch observes the interaction, concluding that there seems to be no lingering resentment between her sons. She smiles, pleased with the seemingly peaceful atmosphere. Diana politely tells her mother that she's had plenty to eat. A close-up shot focuses on a beautifully prepared piece of meat on a plate. Diana adds that overeating isn't good, as Fianma senses the awkwardness in the air. Fianma takes a slow sip of her wine, her expression revealing her unease with the tense family dinner. Fianna reflects that despite the tension, she has gained a little more respect for the patriarch. The narration notes that while Marquis Tromé has everything, the patriarch cannot accept him. The patriarch stands with a stern, disapproving expression, his daughter Diana behind him. A flashback reveals the source of his disapproval, rumors of Marquis Tromé's philandering with other women. Fianma delicately dabs her lips with a napkin, composing herself after the tense meal. After dinner, the red-haired man slips away, peering down an empty hallway. He corners Fianma in the hall, leaning in close and stating it's just the two of them. Recalling a similar scene where he seduced his wife, Fianma realizes with dismay that the rumors were an understatement. He's much worse. Facing away from her, the red-haired man asks if she also wanted to speak with him. He leans in menacingly, accusing her of being a troublesome lady for trying to seduce him, as Fianma thinks she only wanted to talk. Her true desire was to hear the story of a different man, a mysterious traveler, and see his homeland. A hand reaches for the necklace on her chest. A sudden motion startles both Fianma and the red-haired man. He apologizes, claiming there was an insect on her hand, but Fianma resolves she can no longer be alone with him. He grabs her arm angrily, demanding to know what she was thinking by inviting him, calling her excuse unbelievable. As he scoffs at her excuse, his wife Diana is seen approaching in the background. Diana walks past the tense confrontation with a cold, indifferent expression. Fiona looks up in surprise as a new presence makes itself known. Diana walks away, thinking to herself that even if she noticed the altercation, it wouldn't be a problem. The red-haired man tightens his grip, threateningly telling Fiona not to run away. He yanks her arm, pulling her closer against her will. His grip is suddenly broken by another hand as Alphonse intervenes, his expression cold and serious. Alphonse pulls Fiona protectively behind him, shielding her from the red-haired man. Alphonse calmly asks the man if he requires something of his wife, causing the man to stutter his name in surprise. Alphonse informs the smirking man that he seems to have misunderstood something. The man quickly fabricates an excuse, claiming he was merely brushing a bug off Fionma's shoulder. Questioning the bug story, Alphonse lunges forward and violently grabs the man's collar, shocking them both. Alphonse's knuckles are white as he holds the man's collar, the man's face frozen in shock. Alphonse declares with cold fury that it seems a nasty bug has indeed found its way in. He addresses the man as Lord Ptolemy, quoting a holy text that overlooking small evils leads to greater ones. Alphonse stares him down, vowing that from now on he will be more thorough so as not to overlook anything. Lord Ptolemy looks away, sweating and clearly intimidated by the threat. Changing the subject, Alphonse tells Fiona that his mother is waiting for tea and they should hurry. As Alphonse leads Fiona away, Lord Ptolemy watches them go with a dark, resentful look. Seething with rage, he punches a nearby wall, furious at Alphonse's audacity. He smirks, vowing that Alphonse won't be able to protect her forever. With a disturbing leer, he fantasizes about the day he can savor Fionma's pure white skin. The family gathers in a drawing room for tea, the atmosphere still thick with tension. A brief memory shows a happier time, with Lord Ptolemy enjoying tea with his wife and mother-in-law. While the patriarch addresses Fiona, she feels sickened by Lord Ptolemy's gaze, noting how composed he acts around family. The patriarch internally laments that because the church forbids divorce, the family's ties to the troublesome Ptolemy must continue. Fiona decides to ignore him, wryly noting that Alphonse also tells lies about bugs, but supposes it's acceptable if it's from the scriptures. The patriarch suggests a game of chess, recalling the magnificent set Fiona gifted them. Smiling warmly, the patriarch tries to remember where he put the chessboard. Alphonse offers to retrieve the set from his room, and his father gratefully accepts. As Alphonse leaves the room, Lord Ptolemy watches him with a calculating expression. Fiona politely asks Benedetto about his chess skills, and he humbly admits to being out of practice since playing against Alphonse as a child. Benedetto says he is no match for Alphonse now, prompting Fiona to muse that she didn't realize her husband was such a sore loser. Lord Ptolemy interrupts, praising Benedetto's resourcefulness and noting his great success within the church at such a young age. Ptolemy reveals that his own influential church faction was created with Benedetto's advice. Fiona smiles politely, asking how the new proposal is different from the existing ones. Lord Ptolemy waves his hands dismissively, declaring that this is not a topic to be discussed with a woman. Fiona turns away, her expression hardening slightly at his condescending remark. Benedetto reviews a document, deciding it would be a good idea to ask his father about the matter later. Fiona observes Lord Ptolemy, finding his reluctance strange for a man she'd expect to be eager to boast. She smiles to herself, changing the subject in her mind to soap and the idea of mixing in medicinal herbs. The matriarch sips her tea, while Diana sits quietly beside her on the couch. The patriarch sternly reprimands Fiona, stating that one does not inquire about a man's work at a family gathering, especially an outsider. He continues his lecture, telling Fiona that her behavior is unbecoming of a member of the Cornero family. Fiona bows her head gracefully, appreciating his guidance and vowing to take his words to heart as a Cornaro. Alphonse returns carrying the chess set, announcing his arrival as his father eagerly welcomes him. Alphonse stands beside Fiona, calmly telling his father there's no rush to start the game, a hint of concern in his eyes. He quietly asks Fiona if something happened while he was away, but she puts on a smile and says nothing did. Alphonse studies her face for a moment before simply saying, "I see." Back in her room, Fiona stands by a birdcage, telling herself that nothing happened and that it isn't an issue she needs to rely on Alphonse to solve. She focuses on her goals, determining she has two main tasks: secure ingredients for her medicine and gather information on the plague of death. She reflects on her challenges: a difficult family, a troublesome relative, and an untrusting husband. but concludes that with her goals and skills, she has nothing to fear. A memory of sitting by a sick man's bedside surfaces, and she thinks how different things are now from when she had nothing to strive for. A sudden thought strikes her. Ah! She gasps softly. A small, spiky hedgehog glares up from the floor as she calls out, "Rich, you little rascal!" Fianma picks up a bowl and spoon, apologizing to the hungry-looking hedgehog for the delay. As she feeds the cute hedgehog, she thinks he's so honest when he eats, wryly calling herself an obedient owner. With renewed resolve, she stands up, deciding to do the work they ask of her just as they wish. Tap, tap, tap. A knock sounds at her door, and Alphonse's voice asks if he may have a moment. Fianma turns as Alphonse enters, asking if something is the matter and noting that she hasn't changed her clothes yet. She looks flustered, admitting she was so focused on feeding Reach that she completely lost track of time. As they walk out of the room together, Alphonse reveals that his mother told him what happened while he was away. He glances at her, stating that if she insists nothing happened, he will not press the matter further. Her hand instinctively goes to the delicate gold and pearl necklace around her neck. Alphonse continues, however, that he has a right to know the details of the incident in the hallway, reminding her that they are husband and wife.